Wake up, Link.
The Legend of Zelda, Breath of the Wild. Wow, what a game. I've wanted to express my feelings about this adventure for so long. From my beginnings on my main channel of Dan's Game Zone, to the hiatus of me and my friends' channels all of last year, and now in 2019 on Team $10, with some amazing videos filled with personality. I've wanted to talk about this game for so long, but at long last, the day has finally come. Please join me for this in-depth analysis, and a true love letter to this game in every aspect. I present to you all my review of The Legend of Zelda, Breath of the Wild. So right as the game starts, our hero Link, obviously, mysteriously wakes up from a mysterious cave known as the Shrine of Resurrection, when a mysterious voice guides you to go collect your signature item of this game, the Sheikah Slate, which, let's be honest, is basically a glorified iPad. From there, you're told to exit the Shrine of Resurrection, being thrusted into the world of Hyrule in an absolutely stunning shot, setting a wonderful first impression for the adventure ahead. From there, you're sorta guided to talk to this mysterious old man nearby, but you're not outright told to do any of that. If you want to, you can simply go into the forest area ahead of you, or try to climb the wall behind you, or explore more of the area, or see what happens if you jump off the cliff. Whee! Whee! It's not pleasant. Anyway, jokes aside, if or when you do decide to go talk to the old man, he explains to you that you're currently standing on an area known as the Great Plateau, and it's completely isolated besides you and him. Besides the enemies, of course. Shortly after, you're nudged by the same mysterious voice in the Shrine of Resurrection to follow the signal on your Sheikah Slate, leading you to a mysterious structure after a bit of walking around, with said structure containing a slot for your Sheikah Slate. Placing your Sheikah Slate inside triggers a cutscene to activate, causing towers to rise all across the land of Hyrule, acting as markers of sorts, which in activating said tower on the Great Plateau, downloads all of the current region to your Sheikah Slate, giving you the ability to view all locations within said region from any point. Right afterward, you're given your key objective to this game, when that mysterious voice informs you that the seal containing the evil known as Calamity Ganon breaks free from the confines of Hyrule Castle. The entire world will be destroyed once and for all, prompting you, the player, to go and stop him as best you can. But before you're given the opportunity to do anything about Calamity Ganon, the same old man on the cliff informs you that if you want to have any chance of leaving the Great Plateau, you'll need to visit each of the 4 awakened shrines located within the region to prove your work to said old man and claim his paraglider so you can safely leave the plateau without falling 300 feet to your death. But from here, the way you traverse the Great Plateau is pretty much up to you in terms of what order you tackle them, and how you get there. Do you wish to go straight forward to the shrine ahead of you, advised by the old man? Or will you go explore the woods to your left to go gather materials in hopes of being able to brave the monsters in your journey? It's all up to you in terms of how you approach it, and in what way. But hey, speaking of the shrines, each of the 4 shrines on the plateau, each give the main functions to your Sheikah Slate for the rest of the game. Starting off, we have the all-new Bomb Rune, both spherical and cubed, give you the ability to summon bombs at will through the Sheikah Slate, as opposed to buying them at shops in past games. But anyway, bombs in this game can be used to trigger controlled explosions to blow enemies away, and obviously blow things up, but the option to use sphered bombs or cubed bombs is a great option to use depending on the terrain you're in, if you don't want a spherical bomb to roll down a hill and completely miss your target. A brand new ability also given to you is the rune Magnesis, allowing you to levitate almost all metal objects and move them at will through your Sheikah Slate to manipulate puzzles, use weapons, build bridges, and even more. The next new rune, and arguably the most interesting of all, is Stasis, which allows you to stop nearly any object in time, allowing you to attack said energy to store up kinetic energy for a limited amount of time, and once the time is up, that kinetic energy is released, launching said object in a set direction. This rune can be used to launch yourself across the map with a rock, freeze a moving object to avoid being hit, launching a quick multi-hit on enemy, and even more. The fourth and final main rune is the Power Cryonis, allow you to create a pillar of ice as a platform above any water surface, such as a river, a lake, a pond, and let you be able to cross large areas of water with far more ease than swimming, for instance. So along the way to these shrines, you'll learn the proper techniques to climbing, swimming, stealth, basic combat, cooking, resource gathering, and even more. And so after all that, you will finish all 4 shrines, with the old man returning to you once again, informing you to meet him at the top of the Temple of Time, in the middle of the Great Plateau. Once you finally arrive, he reveals to you that he is not just an old man, and is in fact King Rhoam, the last king of Hyrule. He then goes on to explain to you that 100 years ago, a great prophecy foretold that the Calamity Ganon would strike Hyrule soon from underground. In response to this, King Rhoam took this prophecy to heart, and began to make vast preparations to give Calamity Ganon the ultimate kick to the balls. In searching for defenses, Hylians had discovered ancient machines known as the Guardians, as well as the Divine Beasts, which led to the creation of the Champions of Hyrule, comprised of Princess Mipha, of the Zora tribe, the arrogant Rivali, of the Rito tribe, Lady Urbosa, of the Gerudo tribe, and the hard-hitting Daruk, of the Goron tribe, all of whom were chosen to pilot the Divine Beasts. But despite their best efforts, when the Calamity struck Hyrule, Ganon had taken control of the Guardians and the Divine Beast, and completely laid waste to Hyrule, with Link being mortally wounded and taken to the Shrine of Resurrection to heal his wounds. And so at the 11th hour, Zelda marched back to Hyrule Castle to use her sealing power to keep Calamity Ganon from destroying anything else. And while her power has been working for the past 100 years, her power is dying out and will soon let Calamity Ganon break free to destroy the world once and for all. As his final wish, King Rhoam asks you to save Princess Zelda at any cost, and advises you to seek out Kakariko Village, as going straight for the castle would likely be a great decision. Which you can totally do, by the way. You'll be in for the fight of your life if you choose to do so, if you're skilled enough though. And so as King Rhoam fades from existence, he gives you the paraglider you've been seeking, giving you the ability to leave the Great Plateau, and to explore the rest of the Kingdom of Hyrule. And so from this point in the game, you pretty much have the freedom to go and do whatever you want, and explore every nook and cranny of what Hyrule has to offer. And while you are sort of nudged to go to Kakariko Village and free the Divine Beast, you don't actually have to do any of that. It's your choice. Do you wish to go after the Divine Beast in hopes to be able to defeat the Calamity Ganon once and for all? Or do you wish to explore the wilds of Hyrule to craft your survival until you're an unstoppable warrior capable of stomping anything in your path? Or do you decide to tackle the game's 120 shrines scattered across the entire land of Hyrule to build up your stamina and hearts? In the end, it's all up to you how you want to progress, and the best part is that you have all the tools you need to do anything your heart desires after the Great Plateau. But let's take a few steps back and talk about Kakariko Village first. So no matter how you get there, you'll make the amazing discovery that the world is thankfully not only populated by you and previously King Rhoam, which is made even greater by the fact that, like Majora's Mask, all these people have their own schedules and their own everyday lives. But anyway, you'll soon make your way to the town representative, Impa, of the Sheikah, who informs you to where each of the Divine Beasts dwell, in locations including the Zora Fountain, the Gerudo Desert, the Rito Village, and Death Mountain, and tells you to first go to the village of the Zoras. So let's say you do decide to go after all 4 divine beasts. Well, for better or worse, depending on how you look at it, they all follow the same basic formula. You go to the village of the divine beast, you speak to the town elder or representative, you get a flashback cutscene of Link having some basic character interaction with one of the champions, you find a type of clothing to prepare for the hazards ahead, and then you do some super wild epic ass shit. Holy shit, Link is fucking flying. We are 3,000 feet in the air, Link's flying. Oh my god! We're going up into the air! We're gonna shoot some shit in slow motion! Oh my god, we're in the harsh deserts with lightning going all over the place. How can it get better than this? Well, except that one. That one kinda sucks ass. Like, it's just kinda shit. And hey, fuck you, you fat ass piece of shit! Anyway, these events give you the opportunity to enter the Divine Beast to remove the evil beings Calamity Ganon left behind controlling said Divine Beast. And while this way of progression makes for an easy way of traveling to each Divine Beast a fairly easy task, by the 3rd or 4th Divine Beast it can become a fairly repetitive structure depending on who you ask. But I can also see why the developers decided to structure the Divine Beast quest this way. Because say if you only want to go to visit 1 or 2 of the Divine Beasts and not all 4 since the option is up to you, the developers may not have wanted one Divine Beast to feel overly more important to the other Divine Beasts, which also extends to the actual Divine Beast inner designs. The Divine Beasts, besides serving as the story's main objectives, also serve as the main dungeons for Breath of the Wild, like Majora's Mask. Hey, would you look at that? 2 Majora's Mask references in one video. Anyway, while there are only 4 dungeons in this game, they are quite complex by Zelda standards, though not Majora's Mask levels of tough. 3! But honestly, they're really not that spectacular dungeons by Zelda standards, as all 4 Divine Beast interiors look and feel exactly the same, aside from a few different mechanics. But they do have their bright spots, as a super interesting mechanic of these dungeons is that with each Divine Beast being in the shape of an animal, be it an elephant, a bird, a camel, or a lizard, you can manipulate certain parts of their bodies, such as the elephant's trunk for example, which, by the way, before anyone else asks me, the elephant's real name is Varuta, just so you guys know. But overall, all the Divine Beasts are just okay. They're nothing like amazing, but none of them are like awful, except like maybe the camel one a little bit, but that's another story. But let's take a few steps back and talk more about the champions themselves. While I will say that it's nice to see Link interact with other characters, with full voice acting might I add, their characters are more or less one note and don't leave the greatest impression. I wish we could have had significantly more character development from all of them, and while I understand that we can't because, well, they're dead, it would have been nice to see if their characterization at all changed in the 100-year gap after they freed the Divine Beast when you talk to him in a brief cutscene. But back to the Divine Beasts, their sameness unfortunately also extends to the boss fights, all of which are these Blight Ganon bosses which honestly don't change that much and aren't very memorable either, which kinda sucks. But at least it's kinda made up for by the fact because the actual music that plays when you fight these guys is some really great stuff with a real sense of intensity and energy to it. Now that we've finished discussing the Divine Beasts inside and out, I would like to reel things back to the characterization. As I said before, the characterization of the champions is fine for the most part, even though I wish we could have gone to know far more about them. But outside of the champions, the character who gets the most characterization is unironically Zelda herself. Throughout the game, you'll come across certain spots on the map that reflect a selection of pictures you can download to your Sheikah Slate in Hateno Village. You also get the Cameroon, but I'll talk about that later. Anyway, these 12 pictures you can download to your Sheikah Slate consist of very particular spots in Hyrule that when you get them, Link will regain a memory, showing a flashback cutscene when Link and Zelda, and sometimes the champions. But anyway, cutting back to 100 years ago, we see Zelda as a princess desperately trying to awaken her stealing power by the time Calamity Ganon arrives, but is unable to do so much to King Rome's dismay, with Link also at the forefront shown to be Zelda's royal guard, with Master Sword in hand by the way. But from Zelda's perspective, which multiple characters point out by the way, is seen as a reminder of her own failures in her eyes. Over the course of the events from 100 years ago, however, we see Zelda go from rebellion towards Link to beginning to grow a friendship of sorts. But when the disaster struck, her sealing power had awakened just as Link was about to bite the dust with an obliterated Master Sword from the Guardians. But unfortunately, she was too late as Link dies from his wounds, and is quickly taken to the Shrine of Resurrection by Hylian guards, as Zelda in the meantime takes the Master Sword to the Lost Woods in South Hyrule to put the Master Sword to rest for 100 years, so when Link would eventually wake up from his injuries, he would one day be able to reclaim the Master Sword. And so after tragedy strikes, Zelda goes back to Hyrule Castle to seal Ganon away. It's really quite fascinating to see how much character development Zelda gets during Breath of the Wild, and it would have been nice to see even more. Although, with the sequel to Breath of the Wild already announced, we probably will get to see more of that. Link and Zelda bear hookup, by the way. Anyway. If there's one character in Breath of the Wild I'm extremely disappointed with character development-wise, it's Link himself. And yeah, believe it or not, unlike previous Zelda games, he's actually called Link this time. And seeing how in past Zelda games, being able to name yourself was kind of the idea of linking yourself to the game. The fact that he's actually called Link this time would make you think that this Link is a completely separate character, and as an actual, well, character, with genuine emotion in-game. But unfortunately, the game still chooses to not have Link speak at all, which is truly disappointing with this being the first Zelda game with full voice acting and cutscenes. Having Link once again being mute when other characters are speaking directly to him can make some cutscenes somewhat awkward to listen to. And while the game does give a reason as to why Link doesn't speak if you search around enough in Hyrule Castle, it's honestly kind of a crappy reason. You know, it's the whole pressure of being the hero is almost too great, is a really lame reason, at least to me. It would have been nice to see a Zelda game where the main character actually has some true character development, as opposed to a few shock faces sometimes. But anyway, with all that said, let's finally talk about the gameplay. So for starters, I want to start by saying that this is like no other Zelda game from the past 25 years, where we've gone from select dungeon order and linear pathways until the end of the game like Ocarina of Time and Twilight Princess, to a completely seamless open world where you choose where and how you want to traverse. But there is one Zelda game that I would like to call to attention, which is of course the very first game, The Legend of Zelda, all the way back on the NES. It may not seem like much today, but back then it did provide the most open a world could get back in 1986. It comes all the way back to Breath of the Wild where you can progress almost however you want. But anyway, that mindset way back in the day returns for the first time in the series since the game where for the most part, you decided how you wanted the adventure to play out. And trust me, in this game, it's completely up to you. As compared to any other Zelda game, Hyrule is absolutely massive in this game by comparison, making it extremely easy to get lost. In the fun discovery and exploration, of course. But the best thing about Breath of the Wild's massive world is that it does not repeat the mistakes of past Zelda games such as Ocarina of Time and Twilight Princess with their versions of Hyrule. And what I mean by that is that if you look at the footage of both of these versions of Hyrule, aside from a few heart pieces and the occasional side quests, there is almost nothing to do in these huge patches of absolutely nothing. Which, by the way, is especially evident in Ocarina of Time, by the way. Don't kill me. Anyway, Breath of the Wild jumps over these pitfalls by always giving you things to do in the world, with also vastly varied landscapes from mountains, to rivers, to forests, and ruins. There's always something new to discover in the land of Hyrule. Speaking of things to do in the world, I'd like to discuss some major points of interest beginning with the shrines. Shrines, to sum them up in the easiest way possible, are basically bite-sized dungeons, each with their own sets of challenges, be it from a physics-based puzzle where you're required to use your runes, or maybe a combat challenge requiring you to fight a guardian, be it in a fight using your combat skills to the best of your abilities. There are also some shrines known as shrine quests, which has you do a side quest out in the overworld, be it completing some sort of riddle or overworld puzzle, such as being in the right area at night or day, or saving a dragon for instance.
Watch out! You're gonna crash! Ah!
Completing these challenges will cause a shrine to rise up out of the ground, allowing you to gain your reward. Speaking of rewards, completing these challenges will cause a shrine to rise up out of the ground, allowing you to gain your reward. Speaking of rewards, Every shrine in the game will reward you with at least a spirit orb, in which gaining 4 of them will allow you to gain a heart to increase your maximum HP, or train them in for a stamina segment. Increase your maximum stamina, allowing you more energy to climb, sprint, or charge attacks for a longer amount of time when using a weapon of any sort. In my opinion, shrines are a great way to motivate the player to go out there and explore the world, partly because going back to the Divine Beasts, with them being the game's main dungeons and there only being 4, the 120 plus shrines do a great job in picking up the slack when it comes to dungeons. And it's also amazing that besides the combat shrines, almost every shrine is some type of totally different puzzle based on temperature, physics, acrobatics, or motion controls.
What are those Neanderthals up to? Don't they know I'm busy spoiling myself?
Anyway, I'd also like to mention that if and or when you find them out in the overworld, once you activate them with your Sheikah Slate, the orange Sheikah eye on the front of them will change to blue, indicating that they've been activated, and that when you go to the map screen on your Sheikah Slate, you can use them to fast travel around the world, which is a very nice as well as a convenient way of being able to go back to them with ease, if you want to come back to them at another time because maybe you want to return stronger, couldn't figure them out, or something else like that. But hey, speaking of fast travel, that brings me to my next point, which are the towers placed across the land of Hyrule. So if you remember back to the beginning of this review when I mentioned that activating the tower on the Great Plateau activated towers across the different regions of Hyrule, well, this is exactly what I was talking about. These towers serve as a great vantage point when you choose to teleport to them, as just like the shrines dotted across the map, activating the towers will let you then fast travel to them at any point in the game. But the towers also serve a dual purpose, as using your Sheikah Slate on these towers, like the Great Plateau, will download the entire map of that region to your Sheikah Slate, showing you exactly where you are and what is around you. But the greatest things about these towers is that seeing how they are normally in a part of the region where you can see a whole lot of land, they provide a great jumping off point when using your paraglider, being able to glide to the part of the land. And let me tell you, that jumping off a high point and gliding to your next destination is one of the most fun things you can do in Breath of the Wild. As a whole, being able to simply take in the sights around you and just breathe in the atmosphere, but I'll talk about that stuff more later. Anyway, the towers are a great way to pinpoint where you're going to go next, and an easy way to spot shrines from afar. The next point of interest I would like to talk about in Hyrule are actual towns that you can go to, and in one particular case, can even live in. The town's greatest purpose in Breath of the Wild are that they make this world feel truly alive in a post-Calamity Ganon world, where, as I said before earlier in the review, we're like in Majora's Mask. 4! Everyone has their own schedules and what they do on a day-to-day basis, and you can see this as in towns there are people you can follow who actually walk around like real people and go to their own places and show that they have actual lives, further making you, the player, believe that this is a real place, and is by far and wide the most alive world in Zelda since Termina and Majora's Mask. 5! But anyway, the different towns you visit throughout your journey, which includes Kakariko Village, Hateno Village, Goron City, Rito Village, Zoro's Domain, Gerudo Town, and Lorellan Village, all have their own shops, houses, and side quests. Now real quick, I'd like to sidetrack for a minute and talk about Hateno Village, as this village arguably has the most to do, as this town has a store which will allow you to customize the colors of your gear if you have the right materials, and also has its own Sheikah Technology Center, by which going there, the people in there will allow you to upgrade your Sheikah Slate, which includes adding the camera rune, which, as I hinted towards earlier, this rune will allow you to take pictures of materials, enemies, and more, which will then allow you to add them to the other big new thing added to your Sheikah Slate, which is something of an encyclopedia within your Sheikah Slate, which you can add your photos to, which will add a description of whatever you took a photo of. So it's a pretty neat feature in my honest opinion. Other upgrades include faster recharge times for your bomb runes, and the ability to temporarily freeze enemies in time with your stasis rune. So all that's pretty cool. But what's easily the coolest thing you can do in Hateno Village is the ability to actually own your own house. This can be done through a somewhat lengthy side quest, but it's pretty cool when it's all said and done, and the ability to hang up some of your standard weapons, bows, and shields is a really cool feature, especially if you get amiibo weapons, which you don't want to use, because, well, they're really cool. But I'll talk about that later. Anyway, this is actually a great segue into my next point, which is so many side quests in Hyrule this time around. Now, side quests in this game are really not that bad. They're definitely a step up above the past few Zelda games, as I'd say around 80 to 90% of them are satisfying and fulfilling in their own ways, with the rewards usually being a random amount of rupees, which is used as currency in this game. Some things never do change, I guess. Anyway, while I do think that most of the side quests are pretty solid for the most part, none of them are really that outstanding in any way, nor memorable. But there are two that stand out really well that I would like to talk about. The first one being the house quest that I just talked about, but the other one I want to talk about is the side quest where you create a new town named Tari Town, a side quest that takes you all around all of Hyrule to almost every village in the game, if not all of them. But anyway, this quest will have you gathering materials, recruiting people in other regions of Hyrule, and even setting up a wedding at the end of it all. And while the rewards you gain may not be that spectacular, being able to attend a wedding in a Zelda game and raising a whole entire town from nothing is admittedly very heartwarming, and is without a doubt the best side quest in the game, bar none. But before I move on, I should definitely mention the absolute most massive side quest in the entire game, and possibly in the entire series, the KOROK Seeds. The KOROK Seeds act as a key collectible to expanding your inventory for weapons, swords, and shields, and you can find them by randomly coming across little mini puzzles all over the map, such as placing a metal block in the right spot, or putting a lone rock in a circle of other rocks. And then you give them to this guy named Hetsu, who puts them in his maracas and then plays them for you, adding another spot to your inventory. Now, to fully upgrade your inventory will only take somewhere around 430 KOROK Seeds. But I highly recommend not trying to collect them all, because you will go absolutely insane trying to track down all 900 KOROK Seeds. Yes, even with the DLC KOROK mask. Okay, rant over. Moving on. The next thing I would like to bring up is the gear you can gain in Breath of the Wild, and holy fuck is there a lot of them in this game. With over 100 pieces of gear if you include the amiibo and the DLC clothing, in addition to the main game, which includes the Tingle outfit. Anyway, the gear you can find and equip in this game can be used to provide higher defense for Link, grant you resistance to hazards like the molten heat of Death Mountain or the harsh winters of the Snowy Mountains, and some gear can even be used to give Link special abilities, such as the Zora armor, which can be used to swim in waterfalls, or the now iconic Champion's Tunic, which wearing it will allow you to view enemies' HP in the middle of a fight. But really the best part of all these outfits is of course the option to dress up Link however you want to, give you yet another level of customization to your adventure, as maybe you want more attack power, but you also want to be able to climb up surfaces at a faster rate. Well, you can compromise and wear the climbing bandana to climb faster, and wear the barbarian shirt to put out more damage to enemies. Or maybe you don't even care about any stats or effects or anything like that, you just want to wear something really goofy. Well, you can. And trust me when I say this, you can have Link wear some really stupid ass shit in this game with, let's say, Abel Coblin hat, with the Flamebreaker armor, and no pants at all. Yeah, if you want, you can even play the whole game with nothing but your underwear. But you will be heavily advised to wear clothing if you want to brave the conditions of the wilds of Hyrule. Which brings me to my next point. I will only spend a minute or two talking about this, but when you're exploring the brutal heat of the Gerudo deserts, or the negative temperatures of the Snowy Mountains, it will obviously drain your health, where after enough time you can potentially freeze or burn to death. Which is one of the reasons you'll want to buy said armor, so you'll have the proper resistance to the temperatures. And speaking of temperatures, I'd like to discuss the weather system in this game as a whole. So one of the more interesting aspects of this game, in my opinion at least, is the real-time weather system implemented into Hyrule, where if you look up into the sky for a full 24 minutes, which by the way is one full day in Hyrule, the clouds in the sky will constantly be on the move, changing from day to night and sunshine to the rain. Okay, let me talk about this for a second. I guarantee you that the rain will be your absolute #1 worst enemy in this entire game. Yeah, worse than Calamity Ganon. He's absolutely nothing compared to the fucking rain. And I say this because with climbing being such an essential part of the game specifically for traversal, if it's raining, you'll only be able to climb a few feet before you lose your grip and slide all the way back down, which fucking sucks dick. But then it gets even worse, because when thunder and lightning join the mix, as then not only can you not climb anymore until the rain stops, but seeing as many shields, swords, and clothing in this game are made out of metal, you can very easily get struck by lightning, often leading to grave results. So then you have to put your equipment away, which really just sucks. And while all this does make sense in the context of the game world, and the lightning problem can be dealt with through a certain side quest late game, it doesn't change the fact that it can really ruin the mood when you're in the middle of a big climb, and that it's all for nothing if the rain happens. But, speaking of climbing, the next thing I'd like to talk about is how you're going to traverse Hyrule and your stamina meter. So in a world as big and massive as Breath of the Wild, you'll travel through many different means necessary by walking, swimming, gliding, climbing, shield surfing, falling, with climbing of course being the big new addition to the Zelda franchise, well, sort of. Now past Zelda games such as Twilight Princess for example, you could technically climb in that game, but it was limited to certain surfaces and vines. But here in Breath of the Wild, you can climb literally almost everything. Except when it's fucking raining! But yeah, almost any surface, be it a mountain, a tree, or a block of Cryonis. You can climb almost anything, adding an entire new depth to how you approach your exploration to the land of Hyrule. As for the first time in the series, you're getting a real sense of vertical progression through terrain instead of just pure horizontal movement across the map. And the best part is that climbing is not an ability given to you for completing a dungeon or anything like that, as you're even climbing the freaking Shrine of Resurrection. But despite the fact that you can climb almost anything, you are still somewhat limited in a sense by your stamina meter, which determines how far you're able to climb before you inevitably get too tired to climb any farther and fall. Hopefully not to your death. But speaking of, your stamina meter is tied to just about every main action you can perform within the game. From climbing, which I just talked about, to sprinting, swimming, taming horses, and even factors into combat. Your stamina meter, in some sense, is the one ultimate factor in the entire game that really makes you think about a lot of your actions when you're out exploring. In other words, it keeps you from outright becoming a god of destruction. But with all that said, I think it's finally time to talk about this game's art style, and the presentation, and the soundtrack. All this and more right after a commercial break! What the hell, Austin? You really need to work on wave dashing. I like rap!
That's right, folks. Now we have Austin Tolan Fart in a Jar. Now, with this amazing product, you can open it and you can smell Austin's amazing farts. And you can do so much more with it, like put bath water in it, smell it, fart in it, and so much more. This product will be a whopping $10 million. But don't worry, when you buy one, it comes with Stride's Fart in a Jar. Anyway, guys, pick up the product. It will be on sale soon.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to more Breath of the Wild. And right now we're about to cover near the grand finale of this review, which is of course the game's presentation, as well as its soundtrack. So let's get started. Simply put, Breath of the Wild at a visual standpoint is absolutely phenomenal, with a beautiful color palette to match. It's an extremely appealing art style which meshes the best parts of Wind Waker with the more grounded character designs of Skyward Sword, without all the washed out colors of Twilight Princess, as good as that game looks, at least in the HD version. All of it is just beautiful to look at, especially at dawn when the sun's rising. That's just something that will never get old, no matter what. And thankfully, what comes with great graphics is a great performance. Now, admittedly, when the game originally came out back in March of 2017, there were some frame rate issues, especially when there was a lot going on, but not long after, there was a patch that smoothed out the performance and only really has an occasional hiccup when there's a lot of fire or explosions on the screen. Now, presentation-wise, the only thing that may seem a bit divisive is the soundtrack. Now, don't get me wrong, there are some absolutely magnificent tunes backed up by a whole orchestra, but those big pieces are really only used in plot important places and Hyrule Castle. Not to say that the rest of the soundtrack is bad by any means. I mean, the battle themes are some of the best in the series. But Breath of the Wild breaks away from the standard Hyrule field music. It goes for something far more atmospheric, with the constant sounds of nature in the background, like birds and crickets chirping, with the wind blowing across the grass, with occasional piano notes being played at certain points. It's some pretty great stuff, all things considered, and works perfectly for the type of game Breath of the Wild wants to be. But while I personally have no problem with it at all, I can see where some players may complain with wanting a more interesting music selection to listen to. And while I can totally see that, it doesn't bother me in any way at all. Alright, I think this review has gone on long enough. If it isn't already obvious enough, this game has a very special place in my heart, and is without a doubt one of my favorite games of all time. This is what you call an adventure, and a once per generation type of experience. And if you own a Nintendo Switch or a Wii U and don't own this game in some capacity, then what the hell are you doing? I guarantee you that this game will be remembered for years to come in the same vein as Ocarina of Time was all those years ago, and will set an example for many games to come down the line as well, which we're already seeing with the recently announced Breath of the Wild sequel. But anyway, with all that said, I really hope you guys enjoyed this review, as I put my heart and soul into this video. I'd really love to hear what you guys have to say about this game in the comments below. But with all that said, you all have a wonderful night. Take care. I will see you all later.